right, so let's we're going to turn the page over to the Camilo Doval problem that's at hand. I mean, it's nothing. I don't have anything that I can say other than it's a problem. Like this, we are past the point of, you know, oh, just give him time, or he'll figure it out, or it's just we see the excuses almost every single game where it's like, oh, they shouldn't have thrown him in this game, and they shouldn't throw him with a lead, or now he's pitched 2 games in the last 3 days or something. It's like I'm tired of all the excuses. Like at some point, it's got to just come down to, is he a professional? Because if the answer to that question is yes, he is a professional, go get 3 outs.
Yeah.
Stop walking guys stop walking multiple guys when you have a big lead, and putting yourself in a position where a ball that had a 0.30 or whatever expected batting average can possibly leave the yard to tie the game. Like it's no one's fault but his own. He walked 2 guys in front of that. So I just, it's an issue. Like he needs to, in my opinion, they need to get him out of that role, at least for now. Like I'm not saying it's permanent. I think he'll figure it out at some point. But I mean, they just can't. If they have any aspirations of going to the playoffs, they cannot sit here and constantly trot out a closer that is just a complete crapshoot on whether or not he's going to melt down. So,
yeah, I think it's
on that one.
I think it's the lack of consistency that drives me crazy. And I know you pointed out the stats to Ricky and I earlier today where he's averaging 6 walks per 9 innings or something like that, which is
almost. I don't know exactly. It was like 5.65 going into today, and then he walked 2 more guys.
Yeah,
so I'm just guessing it's close to 6.
That's just unacceptable from your closer. I'm sorry. Yes, we all know he can throw 102 and he's got nasty movement on his breaking balls. And when he's on, he's on and gets you a ground ball, but it's a lack of consistency that just drives me crazy. And especially like you just said, for a team that has playoff aspirations, you cannot go into the 9th inning with a 3-run lead and be nervous when your closer comes in. I'm sorry. Yes, he has a mid-2 ERA, but it's like you said, the walks are just a problem, man. And the consistency is an issue. And I don't know. I threw the idea out there 2 months ago when we first started hopping on the show. And I said, hey, they should move Hicks to the pen and slide him into the closer role and make Doval expendable. And, people thought I was a fake fan. It was crazy, but I mean, it's just kind of,
you are.
Yeah.
Aren't you?
But it's kind of looking like a decent idea at this point. If not Hicks, then Ryan Walker or someone. Give Doval a little breather, put him on the Phantom IL so he can get his mind right, whatever it takes. Slide Hicks or Walker into that role for the time being and just see what you got. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at closers like quarterbacks in football, and I know that sounds crazy because closers are only taking up typically 1 inning, but I don't want a closer that's not made up of the right stuff mentally. And that's kind of where I'm at with Doval. I think we've seen it in the past where a lot of people want to see more fire out of him in a closer role. You don't want somebody that's almost too calm, because you do want somebody to have that intensity when they are on the mound trying to close out a game. Especially I go back to the 2021 playoffs against the Dodgers. You want that guy that's just going to be a bulldog on the mound and shut things down. And Doval almost just always seemed too nonchalant. And then now it's kind of not only the nonchalant attitude, but sometimes it's kind of the unwillingness to go into ball games when it's not a save situation, or it almost seems like there's a lack of intensity as well in games like today where they do have a 3-run lead. Because it seems like he has way more issues in these games where they're not up by 1 run in the typical save situation where it's a little bit intense. It's just, he almost needs to get guys on base before he starts trying to lock it in and really be disciplined and throw strikes. And it's just very frustrating to watch. And that's kind of why I was at the point of, I was totally fine with trading him. I've been of the mindset you can always find new closers. It's really not as hard as people think. This is not the days of Mariano Rivera and Billy Wagner and those type of guys. you see teams roll through closers all the time. You know, it's very few and far between that your team's going to have like a Duran or a Clase, you know, these kind of guys that are just absolutely elite year after year, you know. A
I
lot of
mean,
guys fizzle out after a few years.
we did it. I mean, we saw it firsthand, you know, during the dynasty years. They went from Wilson, they went to Romo, they went to Casilla. Like, it wasn't like they had their hearts set on just one closer. They had the ability to, you know, plug in other guys, and it worked.
Yeah. They rode the hot hand.
Exactly.
I mean, just whoever just was the best at any given time, they rode him until either the league figured him out a little bit or he started to struggle in that role, and then they shifted. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, I don't think there's anything. I don't think it's like some giant. It should be some giant thing if they pull Doval from the role. Like, he can earn his way back into it. I mean, it's not like we're saying, you know, he's never, ever, ever allowed to play, you know, pitch the ninth ever again. But like, this guy has got to figure out how to throw strikes. Like, there are too many things right now with him that are a problem. I mean, and it just all adds up. It starts off with the fact that he can't throw strikes, and then he doesn't hold runners, and then he has issues with the pitch clock, and then he just, you know, kind of like Ricky said, like, he doesn't have that mentality, and it takes forever for him to lock in. And then it's, you know, yeah, sure, he's got this great, you know, strikeout stuff, as Cameron points out, you know, 11 and a half Ks per nine. But, you know, why does he need to have his back against the wall before he can get his stuff together every single time he's out there? Because you're just playing with fire, and he's been burned too many times already this season because of it. So I just don't think they can afford to do it. I think they've waited kind of too late in the season to really go the Hicks route at the closer spot. I'd have to see if his velocity comes back, because I don't want Hicks throwing 97 in the closing role. I just don't. If he was throwing 102, like we've seen, like, I could do it. But I think Walker is the best bet. I flagged another comment. Cam brought up Crawford coming up. I just don't think Crawford's pitched enough and is ready for that role. You know, unfortunately, he's been out since June.
Yeah,
But
I don't even think he
I think
started
Walker's your
rehabbing.
guy. I mean, Walker has been their most consistent and best reliever this season. And you know, maybe if they're both, you know, if you end up with a situation like today where Taylor Rogers hasn't entered the game, you know, maybe you can go with Taylor Rogers. He's been pretty reliable, you know, depending on the matchups. That is, you know, maybe if they have a couple lefties coming up, you can throw Taylor out there for the, you know, the 3-hitter minimum. And then if you have to swap pitchers in the middle of the inning, you have to. But like, they just can't keep, you know, sticking Doval out there to do what he's doing. I mean, it's just every time he's out there, I have no faith in the guy, and it's just brutal. So.
Yeah, Walker would be my choice 100%. We really haven't seen, you know, Hicks's velo come back up a whole lot, even since he's been in the bullpen role. I personally wouldn't touch that. I would leave Hicks in, you know, like more of a 6 or 7 inning role for right now until he can prove that he can be a little bit more consistent, because he's still had some of the same walk issues in the pen like he did in his starting role. And with Walker, as opposed to a guy like Tyler Rogers, who they've experimented with in the past, Walker can legitimately strike you out. Where Tyler Rogers, when he gives up his typical little bloop single to start an inning and then a little slow roller down the third base line, and there's first and second with no outs, Rogers has a little bit harder of a time getting out of those situations because he is a contact pitcher. And in the late innings, that can get really sticky really fast. And Rogers, he's up almost around what Doval's got as far as Ks per nine go. So I don't really think it would be some huge drop off. And he's been a significantly better pitcher this year. So I don't see why you couldn't try that out. I mean, we've seen him get out of tons of terrible situations they put him in with runners on third with less than 2 outs. So I think Doval is really on his last leg as far as staying in that role, at least temporarily.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the discussion has to at least, you know, there has to at least be a discussion by Bomel and the coaching staff at this point, because even when he gets a save. Like what's crazy is Doval got the save yesterday and he got the win today. And he did not pitch well in either or. So it's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah. It's and you know, he flashes still. Like he's got the stuff that every now and then he's going to have an outing like he did the first game against Washington, where he just comes in and he just shuts them down, like just like nothing. But he's had, it feels like, only about 3 of those all season, and where he comes in and pitches a clean ninth. I mean, his whip is like 1.6. Like that's insane for your closer to have that. So it's just like you said, the discussions need to be had. I don't expect them to pull him, you know, right now, especially coming off the win. Like, yeah, they kind of talked about it on the post game where they were like, you know, if they lost this game, it might have been more of a talk. But the fact that they still won it, like, they kind of can take a step back and relax a little bit. But and they're going to use the weather. I saw that excuse a lot, and you know, someone brought up Finnegan blew the save. You know, he was like, well, Finnegan was bad too, and I'm like, okay, well, Finnegan's also been good all season. They're allowed to have a bad outing. You know, Finnegan's earned that. He's earned the benefit of the doubt.
I will say Finnegan did the exact same thing, got out of it against the Giants last time because I was actually at the game. Giants had bases loaded and either no outs or 1 out, and he literally got out of it without giving up a single run. So he can let some guys on base from time to time too. But speaking from somebody who's pitched their whole life, I have no patience for the rain excuse. It's a huge advantage to the pitcher, in my opinion, because especially a guy like Doval who can throw, you know, 100 miles an hour. Fastballs are not that hard to throw in the rain at all. You have a huge advantage over the hitter who has to see a 100-mile-an-hour fastball or a 97-mile-an-hour slider with huge amounts of rain coming down in their face. It is way harder as a hitter.
Yeah, I hated hitting in the rain. It was the worst.
Yeah.
I would just throw the bat head out and just try to make contact.
I mean, listen to Canna talk about it after the game, because they interviewed him because he only had 4 hits today or whatever. And Canna's like, dude, I'm just trying to get the bat on the ball.
Exactly. That's all you can do.
You could see it by his swing. It was a total, like, excuse me swing, throw the purse out. And
oh, look, it got by the first baseman. Cool.
The worst is when it's like coming down and you're literally getting like raindrops in your eyes, like mid at bat. You're like,
he literally was talking about that. He's like, yeah, like you can barely see. You're trying to keep your eyes dry.
Exactly.
So I mean, I mean, why is, and that kind of, I know Josh mentioned it earlier too. I saw on X where he brought up, he's like, they're kind of pitching Doval backwards to a lot of hitters, and you know, he feels like it's a price issue, which it could be. I mean, no matter who it is, like it's mental at this point, I think, with Doval. But you know, he's up there and he's trying to throw off speed early, and it's like, dude, you throw 102.
Yeah,
like do you see a Roldis Chapman going out there and throwing 5 sliders to a guy? No. Like he does what he did the other day, and he throws 105 on the hands on someone. That's just impossible to hit. So it's like, even at 37 or whatever years old he is now, he's still throwing like 102, 104, whatever. It's like, Doval, do that.
Yeah.
Figure out how to command your fastball, because if you're throwing 102, there's not too many guys that are going to square you up. Not often. And you're going to be pitching ahead. And if they're geared up for that, then your slider is going to be much more devastating. So
I brought this up both earlier this year and last year. I don't entirely buy that the way Doval's attacking hitters is a price issue, just because he did do the same thing last year as well. He had a much better season last year, but he was attacking hitters backwards a lot of times as well. So I'm not ready to fully blame Price on that. I know a lot of people were coming down his road mid-season when we were pitching a bunch of openers, and I'm like, you know, you see it with the Dodgers, the Braves. We have tons of pitching injuries. You know, you can't really put that on the pitching coach, especially in their first year. It's like, let's give them a little bit of time before we start coming down the pitching coach's road. It's not like a Veely situation where we've seen him coaching one of the worst hitting teams for 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
That comment made me laugh, Tom.
Which one? Yeah, that's worthy.
That's great.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, I agree. I think he has historically had better command with his slider. So I kind of get why he pitched, like that's the one he feels like he can throw for strikes usually. I remember in 2021, it felt like he barely threw his fastball because he would just kind of show it to guys, but he had no clue where it was going. It's felt like his command has improved. Like last season, his fastball command was better. This season, I would argue his fastball command's almost better than his slider command for a lot of the season, which is part of why it's been so frustrating. But yeah, I don't know where, like I said, I don't know who's necessarily to blame, but at some point, like, dude needs to take ownership and he needs to figure out how to be a pro and get the outs because it's getting old real fast. So
yeah, and I would argue that Doval's had probably the easiest role of anybody in the pen all year. I mean, when the pen's really gone through and had to eat a ton of innings because of the lack of starting pitching and the lack of, starters eating innings, Doval's been one of those guys, one of the few guys or the only guy really in the pen who will still get multiple days off in a row because they're trying to avoid using him in non-save situations and in games where they're losing, which is typical. But the Giants went through a couple really bad ruts where they're just unable to get him a save situation. So I just don't buy the excuses. I'm like, you need to be getting in there and throwing pens during the week when you're not throwing like everybody else is, and you need to be working on stuff, dude. You're the closer, like figure it out. So I do think we're seeing Melvin lose a ton of patience with him.
Yeah, rightfully so.
Yeah, throw a pen during a rain delay like Logan Webb.
Right. I was so confused when I saw that. I was like, hey, what am I seeing right now?
When I saw Webb out there, I was like, do they think he's the only guy that can command the ball in the rain? I'm so confused why he's out there. And they're watching Doval walk everyone, and they're like, this guy could probably throw strikes.
And in terms of losing patience, I will say the one person that I saw lose a lot of patience was Mr. Cody. And he's in a good mood right now, but once Doval gave up that 3-run shot, Cody was pretty upset. Yeah, I would have been afraid.
My patience with Doval's been gone.
I would have been afraid for tonight if we lost because Cody was not a happy camper.
I was like, we were this close to having an all positive show. We were this close. And then Camilo's got to come in, walk 2 dudes, and give up a 3-run jack.
Oh man,
like, no, fumes are gone. The fuse is blown. I'm done.